Thank you so much for joining us. Now let's begin from the NPP, where the Asin Central MP Kennedy Ejapon has picked the #1 spot in the New Patriotic Party's latest round of balloting for its November 4th presidential primaries. Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia will be #2 on the slot, while former Agric Minister Dr. Afriyie Akoto III and Adainimo will be the 4th candidate on the ballot. This was announced by the Presidential Elections Committee Chair, Professor Aaron Mike Okwe.
After hours of meeting the candidates and their representatives, Chairman of the NPP's Presidential Elections Committee, Professor Aaron Mike Okwe, announced the outcome of the balloting in front of aspirants and their representatives at the party's headquarters in Accra.
By way of the placement, the tossing of a paper, Honorable Kennedy Ejapon takes #1. The Vice President takes #2. Honorable Dr. Akoto takes #3. And Honorable Adainimo takes #4. That is the final placement by way of the ballot. And this is how it's going to be on the ballot paper for the election.
He also outlined some modalities agreed on by the committee to manage the elections to prevent irregularities, as alleged by some candidates in the earlier election.
We are generally agreed that there will be nothing like camping of persons, so that people will come freely and vote freely on this occasion. The EC officials were present even at the earlier meeting, so that we will be able to iron out these formalities very, very clearly. And we don't say one thing here and then on the ground something else is happening. And we are going to meet the police together with the EC officials, so that everybody sings from the same hymn book on that day. No officials, regional party people, etc., can have any influence on that day. You go to your own constituency and vote, and then you are done. You will not have accreditation to enter any other area, so that there will be no allegations of some people being at certain places and influencing voters and so on and so forth. So that at the end of the day, it's clear and clean.
Reacting to his position on the ballot, MP for Asin Central Kennedy Ejapon believes his #1 position for the second time will lead him to victory.
It's a clear indication that I should be given a chance to lead this country. So I'm pleading with delegates that the signs are clearly on the wall, that if you vote for Kennedy Ejapon, you definitely lead this country and break the 8.
But one of his contenders, Adainimo, does not think so.
It's a number. #4 is just a number. And so it is up to me to educate voters on where they will find the name, the face, and where they will find the space to vote. It doesn't mean anything. I don't see any significance of it.
Kennedy Ejapon has also been explaining what he meant in his showdown comments.
If there is peace, no showdown. And what do I mean by showdown? Showdown simply means I'm going to prove to you that I will beat you during the election. I mean, it is only NPP, when you say showdown, they'll call you to disciplinary committee. So when Vice President also jokingly said he'll give Mahama showdown, are you going to call him to disciplinary committee? These are some of the unfair treatment that I'm talking about.
All 4 candidates will be lacing their boots for a showdown on November 4th. James Aveji's report for JoyNews.
Now, the race started with 10 aspirants, including Kennedy Ejapon, Alan Kojo Chiramanten, Joe Gatti, Kojo Poku, and Dr. Owusu Afriyie Akoto. The rest were Kobene J. Ejapon, Francis Adainimo, Dr. Kofi Konedu Apreko, Boache Chiramanten Ejako, and Vice President Mahamudu Bawumia. However, the Superdelegate Congress held on August 26 cut the number down to 6, with a tie between Adainimo and Boache Ejako. Now, political marketing strategy Professor Kobi Manson joins me via Zoom on the prospect of candidates as they appear on the ballot paper. Prof, does it matter the spot a candidate actually takes on the ballot paper? In this case, Kennedy Japan, should we have a good fortune because it's number one? Is that right?
Thank you for having me. Yes, of course. I mean, obviously, we have actually lived, the experiences of ballot paper positions, I think since 2000 elections. In the literature, there had been evidences of, ballot paper advantages to political parties, to candidates. And then, of course, empirically, I mean, we have experienced, electoral, ballot paper positions. If you recall, in 2000, as Jacob Chibilamte created the ASEAHO, that actually resonated with the people. It means that ballot paper positions can actually give you a certain campaign effect.
Okay.
We always say that the campaign has a serious effect. It's kind of resonates with people. And so when you take a position on the ballot and the creative way that your team can actually fix that particular number into your campaign messaging, it actually sort of resonates and it kind of gives your campaign a certain mojo. And so we say that the campaign has the ballot paper has a campaign effect.
Okay.
Obviously, in a broader election, not this particular one, you realize that the voters are actually of high interest. People know exactly what they're going to vote because it's an internal party election. So you do not necessarily have quite a lot of floaters, so to speak. And then, of course, the issue of literate and illiterate, voters is also kind of reduced a little bit in party elections. However, if it was in a broader, national elections, then of course you can also talk about the electoral effect, where the position on the ballot could give somebody a certain advantage, especially when you're at top of the pile. For example, Kennedy Japan at the top. It makes it easier, especially for people who are in a hurry, people who actually do not have a choice and they just don't want to vote. They are most likely to stamp at the top. Of course, that is not the case in internal party elections because, as I said, the interest is high and most people have already known their choices. And so you do not have that particular effect in an internal election than when you have a national elections.
All right, Prof. So you're reported to have cast doubt on the NPP's stakes in the 2024 election. If Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia comes top in the flag bearership race, he will be number 2 on the ballot paper. What would be the best strategy for him to win this particular one?
As I said, in this particular internal elections, you do not necessarily have a ballot paper strategy because it's a high-stake, high-interest elections. I am sure the majority of the voters, perhaps 95% plus, are actually quite clear who they are voting for. There could be some kind of people in a limbo or having a dilemma because of the exit of Alan Chomanton, which is a major player. And so there will be some voters who would have that dilemma whether they should vote in a particular way. Otherwise, I don't think that most of them would need, or the candidate would need, a certain strategy to actually persuade the voters because most of these voters have already made up their minds because it's an internal party in the primaries.
All right, so the number 3 and 4 spot, for instance, will be taken by Dr. Afriya Akwetu and Francis Adainimo, respectively. What is your take on how they can actually market themselves also?
We have seen evidences of, that is in the general election, where people link the ballot positions to a certain narrative. For example, we saw, John 3:16. Remember, that catchy, slogans, from the NDC at the time. Obviously, we've heard in ASEAHO, for example, from Ajikum Kufuor's, campaign. And so those, the one who's at the 4th position can repeat the ASEAHO. Obviously, the person who's at the 3rd position can use some kind of religious connotations, all to sort of ramp up their campaign, to make the campaign more exciting and for perhaps, to drive their message, further down the line. But as I said, most of these voters in this particular elections have already known who they are going to vote for.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Kobe Mensah, for speaking to us here on JoyNews. Welcome back. Now, the minority in parliament says CEO of COCOBOD, Joseph Boahin-Edu, must resign from office for running down COCOBOD and short-changing farmers. Government announced a significant increase in the price of cocoa by more than 60%, but the minority says that is not enough. Minority leader Dr. Kesela Tuforsen, who has been leading NDC MPs to engage cocoa farmers in Dadie Swaba in the Ahafo region, says the price for a bag of cocoa should have gone up to some 2,500 cedis at least.
2009 to 2016, the farm gate price per bag of cocoa should be nothing less than 2,500 Ghana cedis. If you are to add the premium, in other words, the bonuses that we would have given to the cocoa farmer, the farm gate price per bag should have been 2,800 Ghana cedis. So our calculation point position is that every bag sold by the cocoa farmer, the government has shortchanged the cocoa farmer a minimum of 1,500 Ghana cedis. In other words, the cocoa farmer will interpret it at 50 million Ghana cedis. So on average, if a cocoa farmer sells 10 bags, 1,500 times 10, in other words, 15,000 or 150 million Ghana cedis, according to the cocoa farmer.
Now, the minority are also demanding the resignation of COCOBOD CEO Dr. Joseph Boahin-Edu, who they accuse of mismanaging the cocoa sector and cheating farmers.
You can see that the cocoa beans that we bought for last year, we bought only 650,000 metric tons. 650,000 metric tons. We left, at the time we left office, the metric ton that we sold was 969,000, almost a million. It is declining by the day. In spite of the fact that this government came to Parliament and asked us to approve a loan of 600 million Ghana cedis for them to use the proceeds in ensuring that cocoa will be, they were going to, I think at the time they said it's a form of productivity enhancement program. So they were going to do pruning. And what they are going to do will ensure that Ghana Cocoa Board will exceed 1 million metric ton target. Today, what are we seeing? We are seeing the reverse. So clearly, something is amiss at the Ghana Cocoa Board. We are seeing the production coming down, declining to the lowest in the last 15 years. So everything has gone bad at the Ghana Cocoa Board. We're also seeing them recording massive losses since 2017. Last year, according to their own audit report, they declared a loss of 2.4 billion Ghana cedis 1 year. And the question is, what's going on? Clearly, I don't think that Boahin-Edu deserves to be in office. He has mismanaged the cocoa sector massively. He's been reckless, mismanaged, shortchanged the cocoa farmer, and in the end, he has brought productivity down. So I don't see why he should be in office. He should rather resign instead of him insulting President Mahama.
The minority have been detailing why they think farmers are worse off.
Your own computation. At the time that they were selling cocoa in 2016, the equivalent could buy at least 2 packets of iron sheet, of roofing sheets. Today, even at 1,003, they can only buy 1 packet. The reverse is that it should have been 1-to-1 at the minimum. And during times like this, they should have been better off. Even if it's 1-to-1, it means that if they sell 2 bags, it would have been 2,600. So you can see where we are arriving at. And they should have been better off because ideally, times like this, things that we import into the country like roofing sheet will also go up. And things that you export will also go up. But what we have done, even if you are to do basic economics, by using the rate of inflation and using the deflator to deflate this amount, you notice that clearly the government has shortchanged the cocoa farmer.
They also say government does not have money to buy the cocoa beans. Before Parliament went on break, had the syndicated loan been approved? Isaac Kofi Ejay has been mining some data. He joins me in studio with some trend analysis. Kofi, what do we have?
Right, so we've been looking at basically the, how much government has been selling cocoa per bag over the last, 2 decades, right, from 2012 to 2023. So that's what you have on your screens. And the argument has been who has actually done well or who is actually shortchanging farmers. But per the data that we have, the current 1,308 thousand per bag is actually the highest if you compare all this period under review. But it's also fact that there were some points under the President Akufo-Addo era that the price of cocoa per bag was actually held constant. Okay. So if you look at the 2020, 2021 and 2021-2022 farming year, the price was held constant. It's also fair to say that the same period, actually under President Mahama, former President Mahama, cocoa prices were also held at constant, and in 2012, 2013, and 2013, 2014, by 212 cedis for these two periods that we're talking about. Now, let's look at the next slide and talk about who has actually changed or who has actually increased the price of cocoa per bag by a certain margin. Let's look at this period from 2011 right down to 2023. And just look at these two, outliers in terms of this cyclical data that we are looking at. What do you see? What you see is that almost the two governments, what they do is that on average, they tend to increase the price around 21, 2%, 3%, and sometimes not at all. Then all of a sudden, they'll give you one spike. Okay. In a certain period. So it happened, the same thing happened under former President Mahama. His highest was 62.7% in the 2013, 2014, and 2015 year. Then we have same with President Akufo-Addo. In fact, this is actually the highest if we compare this period. Now, in President Mahama's first term, if you look at the average between 2012 to 2016, he increased the price of cocoa per bag by 22%. President Akufo-Addo's first term was just around 5.4%. That was his first term. So if you compare the first terms, you can see the difference. But in his second term, if you begin to add this 63.5% and you strike the average, this is probably the highest, which is around, the average is around 28%. So that's what the data is saying. And then we'll leave the majority and minority to still go around. But we can see what the data is saying.
Exactly.
It's clear. I mean, data doesn't.
Thank you so much, Kofi, for those details. Now, we'll take a short break. We'll return with more. Stay with us. Welcome back. Let's now take you to Parliament, where COP Alex Manson, the senior police officer involved in the leak tape allegedly discussing plans to replace the IGP, insists he possesses sufficient evidence to support his claims. These remarks come in the wake of the IGP's denial of allegations leveled against him by the said officer and another individual who have accused him of mismanaging the police service and working against the political fortunes of the NPP. The committee tasked with investigating this matter is yet to examine the evidence presented. My colleague Samuel Mbura has more in the following report.
National Security Minister Albert Kandapa had his turn before the committee to testify. His invitation was based on the fact that his ministry had already started an investigation into the leak tape before the ad hoc committee commenced its work. His testimony is expected to provide more insight into their findings to help the committee present a flawless report to Parliament. Chairman of the ad hoc committee, Samuel Atachie, said their engagement with the minister was fruitful.
In the first instance, the Minister for National Security did not tender any document. He only tendered his statement, what he said to the committee. So he made a written statement to the committee. And then we said he should tender the statement he made to the committee. So that is the first point. The second point is that when we return, it is going to be an in-camera hearing, because all the witnesses will congregate with their lawyers, and then they are supposed to give us the evidential support in relation to what they said.
We apologize for that break there, but let's now move away from Parliament, where some parents in villages along the Volta Lake in the Pro-East constituency of the Bono East region are unable to offer travel support for their wards to register in the ongoing limited voter registration exercise. It costs at least 100 cedis to make a trip on the lake to the district capital for the registration exercise. Nanaya Ojima engaged some residents of affected areas and filed the following report.
At least 50 of the 99 polling stations in the Pro East constituency are scattered along the Volta Lake. Traveling to the district capital, Yeji, is a perilous journey, mostly done in engine-powered fishing boats. At least 15 lives have been lost to boat accidents in the rainy season alone. Aside from the risk, the cost involved in making the journey will discourage many from traveling to the registration center. Some guardians express unwillingness to sponsor their wards to undertake the exercise. From Domiabra to the capital is over 40 miles. On market days, it costs 100 cedis to travel to the capital and back. It costs more on ordinary days. If an applicant travels here, how is he going to feed himself? The risk involved is also huge. The lake is flooded, and the risk involved in traveling here has increased due to the thunderstorm. The National Democratic Congress has expressed dissatisfaction about the EC's conduct of the exercise. NDC parliamentary candidate for Pro East, Emmanuel COCOBOD, is frustrated.
They know Pro East to be one of the constituencies which is solidly for the NDC. And since '92, we have never lost that seat to the NPP. And these are some of the exercises they are doing to suppress our votes, because they know they cannot take the seat from us. So automatically, what should they do? They should do something that will amount to voter suppression within the constituency. We are saying to the EC and the well-meaning Ghanaians and the well-meaning people worldwide that the EC is doing something that is not lawful. And we know that what we are telling them today, they will not heed to it, but we know posterity is going to judge them.
The NDC is, however, pooling resources to help subsidize the cost of travel for applicants. Mr. Boam says the party is working hard to maintain its electoral fortunes.
For the overbanks, when it is 3 o'clock and they are still within town, it is not safe for them, because the weather changes beyond 3 o'clock, because clouds are forming, it is too airy and it may affect their voyage, So we believe that if we're able to bring them on time and finish within time, still, you can imagine, more than 200,000, because fuel alone, for the exercise within 3 weeks, fuel alone, we are not getting premise fuel, and we believe that we should be getting any time some come within the constituency. But should we not, then let me give you a quick example. 4 gallon for the fuel, the yellow gallon, for premise is costing us about 160 cedis. But if we don't get premise, we'll spend about 350 cedis for the same quantity of fuel. So, and the NPP, I don't know, we are planning to get premise. Other people have even donated their premise fuel for fishing, which they have to us, that they believe that what NPP is doing is amounting to voter suppression.
Calls for the Electoral Commission to decentralize the exercise are yet to yield results. For JoyNews, Nanaya Ojima reporting.
Now, reacting to this concern coming from some communities, the Coalition of Domestic Election Observers, CODEO, is urging the EC to designate centers closer to where residents live so they will be encouraged to participate in the exercise. Albert Kofiahin is the coordinator.
The concern of Kodai is this fact that the district offices are quite a distance, most of the registrants, that is the applicants. For example, if you take all the capitals, Kumasi, Takoradi, Accra, even here, Accra, you find that people have to take structure. Some may take 2, 3 before they get to the final destination to do the registration. If it's not even necessary to do it at the electoral area level, the EC can designate some centers in a particular district closer to the people, so that they would not necessarily have to travel all the way to the district offices. The draft island in the Afapre, the Dita Island. Traditionally, every time there's registration, we have to hire boats and send people to the place. And they stay there till they finish and come back. And that, I think, it doesn't augur well for anybody. It doesn't appeal to any applicant to hire a boat and come to their farm plains at Donkokrum to do registration. And this is the appeal that Kodai has always been making, that let us try, if it's not even at the various electoral areas, let's break certain areas into some convenient points where the applicants can easily access. You see, what is the motivation? If, for example, you need to take 2, 3 trucks before you get to the registration center, you will be demotivated and you will not bother to go and do it.
Now, away from that story, Ghana has in recent times experienced devastating impact of floods, especially in major cities of the country. The rainfall distribution in the next 2 weeks, according to the Meteorological Agency, may lead to more localized floods in low-lying areas, while other places would experience rains above normal. On climate focus, Kofi Edu Domfa examines if communities and individuals are prepared to develop resilience and adapt to climate changes.
The rains have come down heavy in the past months. In most instances, floods causing havoc. Communities have been inundated, people stranded, properties and lives have been lost. The rains could be worse in the weeks ahead, according to the Ghana Meteorological Agency.
We know that the flood issues that we get here are not just based on the amount of rainfall that comes, but also because of some conditions that are not so much well to cater for the effects or the impacts of the rains that we see in the southern portions of Ghana. Also for places in the northern portions, we're seeing the Bagre Dam spillage having some effects on them. So our east, northeast are all seeing some flood issues, not because of the amount of rainfall coming into their area, but because Bagre is full and then has been opened, and then the spillage is causing those flood issues. So we should be worried because the issues that we get are not just limited to the amount of rainfall that we get. It's more like a compound effect. So it depends on other activities or events as well. So we should be worried and then be cautious as we enter the minor rainfall season, especially for us in southern Ghana.
The extremes of the season, heightened by illegal mining activities, expose communities to health and environmental risks. Agricultural production and livelihoods of farmers are adversely impacted.
The forests help us to access water, but when the forests are destroyed, we get starved of our source of water supply.
Building resilience is still far from reach. The few natural support systems are under attack by the powerful and affluent in society. Churches, fuel stations, industrial and real estate are harming wetlands and water bodies. Urban and peri-urban trees and greens are sacrificed for commercial construction projects. Environmental analyst Eugene Seitutu says this should not continue if Ghana is to adapt efficiently to climate change.
They must ensure that people are not building in waterways, people are not, creating community centers, artificial beaches and all these things that you see in our communities on waterways. You must also do respect the various zonings that are the Ramsey side, the wetlands and all that, which are being developed to all sorts of things. The various district assemblies must ensure that these areas are protected because they serve as a carbon sink of a sort, and as well as a reservoir to, absorb excess rain when this time of the season kicks in.
The government's quest to encourage tree planting under the Green Ghana project has been lauded. This, however, will make little impact if the natural environment is attacked with impunity, without recourse to the collective right to consume good air, build resistance to ill health, and develop sustainably as a people.
If we do things right, we'll be able to free our gutters, and the runoff will be able to find its own smooth way to move. You cannot stop water from flowing, and so if you stop it from one point, we'll find another way to flow, and that is what causes the flood issues that we see here. So we should do that. Another thing is that we should try and find ways of collecting water, rainwater. Rain harvesting is one way to also stop flood issues that we have here. So as we're going into the minor rainfall season, where we'll be getting lots of rainfall, you could be collecting water in your own homes in any way. Some could be just by having some grasses or trees around, which will stop the rainwater for some time and then take time to infiltrate into the ground.
When you look at the historical data from the Ghana Meteorological Agency, the volumes of rain hasn't really changed much, but it's about the human activities, the improper disposal of waste, meaning that the various individuals in the communities must adequately dispose of their waste. There must be bins for them to do that. Also, the district assemblies and the local entities must ensure that these waste are collected promptly, so that people will not be compelled to put these rubbish, in gutters. There must also be, proper zoning of lands. You know that when you go to certain communities, how they are building haphazardly. There must be respect of zonal markings, and these can be done by the district assembly, not necessarily the central government.
Indeed, the realities of climate change are dawning, but the systems for adaptation remain elusive. For JoyNews, Kofi Edudumfe reporting.
Now let's take you to Somalia, where in 2011 she was a Metro Mass Transit bus driver. But 2 years later, she quit her job to join the Ghana Police Service and now driving a police armored vehicle in Somalia. That is the story of Corporal Dorothy Asare, who is part of a number of Ghanaian police women with the Ghana Foreign Police Unit, inspiring the women of Somalia with their roles in male-dominated fields. Civil war and activities of terrorist groups Al-Shabaab have plunged Somalia into more than 2 decades of instability. Security personnel drawn from various countries, including Ghana, are supporting a Somali-led peace and security process. My colleague Maxwell Agbagba met Corporal Dorothy Asare and personnel from the Ghana FPU, and he reports from Somalia.
It is 10:30. Some of the 158 personnel of the Ghana Formed Police Unit are gathered on the field singing morale-boosting songs before the day's patrols in the town of Badoa here in Somalia. Behind them are armored vehicles they'll be using for the patrols. Their presence out there gives residents of Badoa and adjoining communities the confidence to step out and go about their normal duties. Here, I've met one of the women in the team, Corporal Dorothy Asare. She's the driver of one of the armored vehicles. She used to drive the Metro Mass Transit bus in Accra, but now part of the police, contributing their quota to a Somali-led peace and security process.
So we came, that's 7 months now. For driving, I don't think I have any challenge because I was a driver before coming to the police, and I've been driving for so many years, so I don't have any challenge because what a man can do, a woman can also do. So I do it boldly. There is no difference because the bus have a long range, and this one too is also long. So it's almost the same. Driving the bus and driving this one too is almost the same.
Okay.
Yes.
As we drove through town with the team, the evidence of how conflicts can destroy countries became clearer. I saw highly fortified walls in many neighborhoods used to protect residents against attacks from Al-Shabaab. The checkpoints were also many. Some personnel of the Somalia police force patrolled the streets on foot in their muftis and weapons. Commander of the Ghana-formed police unit, Superintendent Eric Van Kofi, says, aside from contributing to the peace process, women like Dorothy Asari, through their role, empower the women of Somalia.
In fact, though we have the little percentage of it, but the few women that I have, they are doing very well. They have the passion and they have the interest in the job that they do. In fact, it will surprise you that to see a woman driver or a runner at this environment that does so well, and they need to be congratulated. They have the passion. These days, we are power women empowerment. We are power, and by so doing, people take inspiration with them. Especially when we go to town, you see women that to share their sentiment with them. But they want to see women. They want to see women in this position. It mentors and it gives hope. It gives hope to women that are coming.
Here, we have women who are gunners, women who are tactical communicators who control their movement, and the women drivers here, women drivers who also take part in the operations that we do. It is not only for the men, no. The women also take active part in whatever we do here.
He's urging Ghanaians to guard the peace we enjoy.
What I would like to say is that we should live in peace, because it is better to hear of a war than to experience war. That is what my old man told me, that it is better to hear of a war than to experience it. So I would plead that we should all be in peace. That is all. And peace is paramount. When you have peace, you have everything. So that is what I would say to my fellow countrymen.
Nice one there. Now, in a remarkable display of community service and Christ-like compassion in action, the Empowerment Worship Center hosted the annual medical outreach and back-to-school program, Life Check. This year's outreach, dubbed Joy in Service, saw a comprehensive medical checkup event aimed at promoting health and well-being among residents of Jolo and its environs.
We in Empowerment believe that salvation is in threefold. We are saved, we are being saved, we shall be saved. Instant, continuous, and final. And salvation has three dimensions: the spiritual salvation, the soul salvation, and then the body salvation. So you are saved spiritually, and then you are saved so in the realm of the soul, which is your mind, your emotions, and then the body salvation, which is your physical human well-being. So the vision of Life Check has come about from a bigger understanding of the full package of salvation, really impacting people's life, not just spiritually, but also physically, taking care of people, reaching out people, being a blessing to people, people's life changing and transforming to the original place that God intended them to be. The Bible says that when Jesus saw the multitude, he was moved with compassion. The Bible says that, and of some having compassion, making a difference. The Bible says, whosoever has this worldly goods and shatters the bowels of his compassion, where the other love of God in you. So compassion is the feeling of sympathy for people and the move to want to do something about it. So Life Check is about just the compassion for human being and human life, what people really need. At least not only in the physical, not only in the spiritual, but also in the physical, and in transforming their lives.
We take a break, we return with Showbiz. Stay.